Welcome to BrokerInTrust.com. Thank you for visiting the website today. Now, before we get started, I'd like to be clear that this website is not about buying or selling a home today. More importantly, it's about providing you the information you need so that when you do decide to buy a home, you have the confidence to make the right decision about who will represent you in one of the most important transactions of your life. On average, people buy or sell a home every 7 years. With such little experience, how can anyone be expected to understand the nuances that separate great brokers from the rest of the pack? Yet so much is at stake. In today's complex real estate market, consumers are left extremely vulnerable. Yet making the wrong decision could cost tens of thousands of dollars. And in real estate, there are no redos. BrokerIntrust began with conversations from brokers who owned and managed a wide variety of companies. These were brokers with high-ranking positions at the local, state, and national levels who had won countless awards. What they realized was that the general public was completely unaware of how the real estate brokerage industry had evolved. More importantly, this lack of knowledge led to tremendous damage in the public. They realized the best thing they could do was make it crystal clear to consumers about which brokers had the commitment, skill, and experience to responsibly manage them in real estate transactions. The videos on my left are meant to prepare you for one of the biggest decisions of your life. Who will represent you in buying or selling your home? In the next 30 minutes, I think you'll be very surprised about what you learn and how much you didn't know. These short videos will fully prepare you to make the right decision. All of us at BrokerIntrust wish you the best of luck.
Buying a home is an exciting, challenging time in a family's life. The investment they make in a home is perhaps the largest one they'll make in their lifetime.
It's not really just about buying a house. It's about your family. It's about your community.
It's where dreams are made and where families grow up.
What's at stake is even higher for a person who wants to buy or sell a piece of property.
There are a lot of issues coming up in the industry now that I've just never seen before.
And it's very complicated. There could be liens on the property. I mean, it's just really a lot of differences now.
More to gain, more to lose in each of these transactions. They're just more complex than they've ever been before.
Well, there's a huge financial risk when you buy a house, but not only what you think about, it's what you don't think about.
And how do I convey it to a client so that they'll really realize the impact it's going to have on their family, on their finances, on their future planning?
It's the wild, wild west out there in real estate today.
Choosing the wrong agent to represent you can be a very expensive mistake. And a lot of times you don't realize it till much later, and you don't get a do-over.
Make sure you vet. Ask for a resume, awards, or certifications. Make them prove that they're a committed professional.
I found out that it's harder and harder to determine who a real committed person is in this business today. It got me thinking about my mom. And if I were to take my mom and send her to some area that I wasn't extremely familiar with, what would I do? What would I send her? Who would I tell her she needs to work with? And it was an answer that I could not come up with. And I started thinking, if I can't come up with that answer, with my experience and my background, who is capable of doing that?
It's very tough to find a good professional.
Out of 150 agents, I probably would have trusted 2 with my mother to buy or sell her house. Other than that, the rest of them I would have rather her do it herself, really. It would be dangerous.
Most companies today have a lot of agents that work with them that would not be allowed to work with their owner's mother. My mom has done 4 transactions in her life. The last home she bought was 20 years ago. With that few transactions, in their experience, the ability to even look at a real estate broker and know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, or how is a service that I need as a consumer going to be serviced by a broker? What skill set is required, and what's that going to mean to me as a consumer? And that became very disturbing to me that should be such a hard decision for any consumer to make, especially my mom.
We at BrokerInTrust believe that the committed need to show that they're committed.
I think that BrokerIntrust is going to be able to give the clients a way to be able to identify who those brokers are, who can really take that transaction and make it really, really a good one.
And that's what really led to the birth of BrokerIntrust, to find a way for all our moms to know they could pick a brand, a company, an organization of trustworthy, vetted and committed brokers in real estate who provide safety and certainty we would want and expect for our moms.
In order to understand the significance of the new BrokerIntrust model, I think it's important to understand the difference between a real estate agent and a real estate broker. A real estate agent is a person who's licensed to help people in the buying and selling of real estate. In order for them to do that, they have to be associated with a broker. A broker has the ability to run their own company, their own business, to hire salespeople, and to leverage their experience over that group of salespeople. A real estate agent cannot be in business for themselves. A broker then is responsible for the accountability and the supervision of an agent. A broker's license is a much more difficult process, more time-consuming, and it takes a greater commitment from an individual person to obtain. About 20% of all the licensees today have a broker's license, and 80% do not.
I want to take you back 25, 30 years when in the late 70s, early 80s, there were 8, 10, 12 people in an office. And they had a broker or a manager that showed up every single day.
We all went into the office, we all went to office meetings, we all toured our new listings.
And that broker or manager was able to one-on-one talk with the agent, ask them what they're doing, ask them about their clients, sit down with their clients in the conference room and go over what the strategies and goals are.
When I started out as a real estate salesperson, my broker was with me every single day for the first 6 weeks. As I spoke with clients, as I met with escrow officers and title people, he was with me. After 6 weeks, he was with me at least once a week or whenever I needed him.
And in those days, there was a lot of accountability, a lot of direct supervision by the broker in the office or the owner of the office.
So you had offices of 10 or 15 people, but it turned into being 15 or 20 office chains in effect. So you had lots of offices, one owner, and the good news is one master plan, one game plan on how to approach client service, marketing, and how to deliver good customer-focused attention. The companies in those days really competed head-on against each other on the basis of client service. So you saw things start to happen in those days, like the first agent sales training programs, the first management training programs. You saw extended, very professional educational systems. And then you saw advanced marketing concepts, different types of advertising. And all of it was really generated around the idea of how can I beat the other company with better service to a client. Those large regional companies ended up earning a very significant advantage over the small one owner, one office, 10-man real estate companies out there. But the executives from these large regional companies, some of them decided that the advantages that the big companies had could maybe be packaged and taken to these small companies. And in doing so, you got the birth of what is known as the real estate franchise business.
All of a sudden, franchises got into the business. The franchise companies said, we can have all these independent owners look like they're a big giant company.
So the idea of a franchise in real estate was basically to mimic a large regional company, basically to fool the public. What you had then, unlike the regional companies, is you had all these individual offices who now, for the first time, carried the same name. However, each were owned by different people.
These companies, these individual offices, even though they look to the public like the same, are actually competing against each other.
And in doing so, started a war for recruiting and hiring salespeople from their other companies or from the companies that they competed against.
In any event, it's what we call the most significant change in the real estate industry in the last 40 years. It basically was the shift from a client-centric business focused on the client to an agent-centric business.
Instead of the clients being the buyers and sellers, the clients all of a sudden became these agents. How many agents can I hire? How many of them can I stack on each desk that I have?
Their model turned into how many agents can we recruit, not how can we better service the client.
Providing exceptional customer service was replaced with how many agents could you recruit.
I really felt as if I was the customer of the corporate identity because I was being constantly marketed all of their services.
My job was to recruit agents. We were supposed to get net 10 a month, which means if I lost 3, that means I had to get 13 to net 10.
They may have 100, 200, 250, 300 agents in one office, and they have one responsible broker and maybe a manager of that office. There's no way that one manager can handle hundreds of agents in an office.
In those days, I was the broker of record for multiple offices with over 400 agents. I had multiple managers trying to keep up with all of those agents, and it became an impossible situation for me to manage.
Way out of the ability to manage and control the quality of service that goes on at a street level with a client.
We would hold training classes throughout the week, and agents wouldn't show up. They had other jobs, other commitments. Their commitment wasn't to real estate.
So it's very difficult to train people who aren't committed to the business.
I treasured when we were a company of 185 professional agents. And then the game changed. It was all about how many agents could we recruit and no longer about customer service.
Having 300 people in my company didn't make me a better broker. It didn't help me to serve my clients any better.
Nowadays, we find that only about 20% of the agents in these large offices are truly committed to providing excellent service to their clients and bettering their own education in this field. And unfortunately, that has become a standard in the industry.
It's why BrokerIntrust is. It's all about the client. It's all about the consumer. That's why we exist, because each one of our BrokerIntrust network members want to service the client directly. It's the broker directly to the client to provide services. They're not making money off of agents like other companies.
They've made a commitment to not hire real estate salespeople. The significance of that is that rather than focus on how to leverage agents to make money, instead, they've made a commitment to focus only on their clients. So all their energy, all their creativity is spent on making better client services and enhancing their skill set and their ability to be a great resource to people who want to buy and sell real estate. In order to understand the significance of the new BrokerIntrust model in the industry, I think it's really important to take a few minutes to just take a look at the overall value a broker can have to any consumer. So the first thing that I'd like to talk about is strategy. The one thing that's very important that everybody understands that are professionals in this industry is that buying and selling a house isn't the goal. When people are buying or call on a real estate professional, they're trying to accomplish a whole series of goals.
It's not about buying or selling per se. It's really more about everything else that's involved in the transaction.
Are you going to live in the house for the next 5 years? Do you want to be closer to work? Are schools important to you? Are you going to bring family to live in with you?
The first thing I need to do when working with clients is to understand their needs, help them develop a goal, determine a time frame, and how I can best service them in helping them obtain their goal of home ownership.
If you don't sit down and strategize with the client up front, you're not going to know where you're going through the transaction.
It's all about talking with the people, finding out the why of their decisions, the underlying emotions and feelings that make the difference.
My experience really looked at those people's needs and found out what they wanted and did exactly what they needed to happen to get them moved from that house to a house closer to the kids' school. So I don't know, could you put a dollar figure on that? I don't think you can. I mean, that's really seeing someone's need, really caring, and really pulling out the resources to make that happen. So I don't think an inexperienced person could do that.
A broker's sensitivity to all those issues is very, very important in constructing a proper approach to either buying a home or to getting your home sold.
That sixth sense is something that you develop with time and expertise. Because if I had known at the beginning what I would need to know, it could almost be overwhelming because it's a huge volume of learning that takes place over 35 years.
The next component to broker value has to do with the actual process of matching buyers and sellers together, finding a home for a buyer or finding a buyer for a home. And that's an important process, important part of the process, but it's not the only part of the process.
One of the biggest misconceptions that buyers have today is they just feel that a broker should just show them a house, open the door, either they've seen it on the internet by a sign or driven by, whatever. But really, that's really a small part of what we really do. That really only amounts to probably 20% of what we actually do, and add to the transaction.
A lot of people think that finding a home for a buyer or finding a buyer for a home is the most important thing in a real estate transaction. And while it's important, it is not near the most important thing in a transaction.
Searches start online now more than 85% of the time. People feel like the only part of the real estate transaction is actually finding the house, because that is something they can do. Back when I started, it was a book that came out every Friday. So a consumer had no way to get that information unless they drove a neighborhood and saw a for sale sign. So today, because the internet is so rich with all that information, I think that buyers and sellers think that that's really the only way to find a house, and really that's not the most important part of the transaction.
You have to be concerned on how you're going to maximize the marketing of a property. And it's very crucial to be able to find the right way for your buyers to find their property. An effective and professional broker will be able to do both of those. It's important components in selecting and evaluating who should work with you.
The next component, maybe the most valuable component to a broker's value, is negotiating. Once a buyer and seller have been brought together, now the serious work begins. Contracts are written, and then dialogue between the brokers and the clients start to take place. And a serious, committed real estate professional at this stage of the transaction can have a tremendous financial impact on a transaction.
While finding a home for a buyer is important, while strategizing for goals are important, I believe that the most important part of a transaction and the biggest value that a broker brings to a transaction is negotiations.
The client is able to make their decisions based on the information and the knowledge that the broker gives them. That can actually translate to a client making more or less money depending on the skills and the competency of that broker.
How am I able to tell when the agent on the other side of the transaction is lacking in experience? It usually starts with the purchase agreement, how they've written it, whether they've protected their client, whether it be a buyer or a seller. And I can see from the transaction, they haven't asked for something that they should have. It's not my job to write their contract for them, so I'm dealing it from the perspective of the client I'm representing.
When I'm either making an offer on a property or receiving an offer on a listing, I always Google the other agent first and find out all about them. And if that agent isn't experienced, I say to everybody, I'm going to have my way with them, and usually do. And we end up basically getting way more than really should be. Sometimes I actually feel bad because it's like a no-brainer. I mean, that experience, in a negotiation, the way to talk to the person, the how to talk to the person, knowing so much information, it's almost an unfair advantage, actually.
My negotiating technique is also going to be based on the experience level of the other side.
My skills at negotiating can virtually make the difference in whether or not a client gets his house sold or my buyer gets the house he wants to buy.
The significance of that negotiating stage and all the dialogue and the negotiations that starts after that contract is written becomes a very, very important place in the process where a lot of dollars can be made or lost. And there's no substitute for transactional experience. A broker who has 100 or 200 or 300 negotiations in their past is just absolutely more qualified to go to that negotiation in representation of a client.
Part of the transaction puzzle, if you will, is vetting vendors. And by that I mean you have an escrow officer, you have a mortgage person, you have a title person, you have somebody that's helping you with home inspection and things of that nature. These are all your partners in a transaction. And by choosing the right ones depending on the transaction, if it's vacant land, if it's a large home in a gated community, if there's homeowners associations involved and things of this nature, by knowing players in the industry that understand how to work as a team, the vetting of the vendors is an important part of the transaction as a whole.
This is a relationships business. And the only way to gain relationships is through experience. It goes back to transactions, it goes back to the experience.
Selecting the proper vendors for a transaction is very critical for the proper success of closing it in a timely fashion. The most important one, actually at this point, is the proper selection of the direct lender. We are making sure to advise our client to use one of the direct lenders that we can trust them to go ahead and close it, so the transaction is going to be smooth and close in a timely fashion.
Past experience is a great indicator of future value. Make sure the vendor has proven that he's got your best interest in heart. It's much more than a home inspection or termite report.
The next component to a value a broker can have to a consumer has to do with the process during escrow. And this is a really dynamic process nowadays. There's so many changes, particularly in the lending side of the business today, that all sorts of things seem to come up that no one has ever seen before. And so a person's instinct in these transactions can make a significant difference to a client today.
Escrow is that critical time period between the contract being signed and the title transferring. The broker's skill set is imperative to guide that transaction to a successful close.
I think a lot of times that people who aren't experienced in this business, agents, tend to be reactionary and don't look for what do we want the end result to be. So they're just reacting and not actually thinking about how to get from this point to this point. Because there is a way to do it, and there's a way to get it done and get it closed and be win-win for everybody. But without experience, I don't think you can make those decisions.
Once we have an accepted offer and we open escrow, that's just the beginning of the process. There's so much more that goes on from that point. It involves inspections. There are reports that have to be obtained from homeowners associations, pest inspections, information that the lender needs, that escrow needs. There are title reports. There's just so much more, and that's when negotiations really take place. And that's where you need a skilled professional to help you through that process.
Every item that comes up in question, or every direction that needs to be pursued one way or another, can have an impact on whether or not it's going to close and whether or not it should close.
As problems or circumstances come out in the transaction, as a professional real estate broker and experienced, it's our job to negotiate or navigate any objections or situations, to be able to make sure our clients get the most value possible.
Things can fall apart at that last moment, and my greatest job and responsibility is to make sure that never happens on my transactions.
Even after the close of escrow, you need a broker who is there for you. That's the sixth and final component of broker value.
There are things that come up after the close of escrow, and you have to be present. You have to be there for them. They expect you to be there for them, and that's just part of it.
And today's transactions can be protracted. I mean, I deal with a lot of trust attorneys, clients who didn't anticipate that they really should have put all their things in a trust, and so instead it's a probate, and people don't realize that can go on for years. So my relationship with clients lasts for a long amount of time.
For me, the close of escrow is not the close of our relationship. I am here for as long as you need me.
A transaction is closed when the keys are handed over to the buyer, or so we think. There are always problems that arise after the close of escrow that a good broker is needed to be present for the buyer and the seller.
I'm in the service business, and I strive to understand what service looks like for my clients.
My service business goes on regardless of the marketplace.
I am my client's real estate professional for life.
Now that you understand a little bit about the way the real estate brokerage industry has evolved, and also the components of value that a broker can have to you, I think it's important now to understand a little bit how that applies and why there's a need for an organization like BrokerInTrust.
BrokerInTrust is not a real estate company. It's a real estate network. So what we're doing at BrokerInTrust is we're gathering the most innovative, the most exceptional real estate brokers in any community that are true professionals, that are vetted through our vetting process, and that are full-time brokers that want to make a difference.
BrokerIntrust is revolutionary. It's a new model.
One of the things that make us unique is we've chosen to make a commitment, unlike other companies, not to hire real estate salespeople.
The significance of that is, instead of leveraging agents to make money, the focus is on the needs of our clients only.
Just to be considered for membership in BrokerIntrust, a person has to first have a broker's license.
Out of all of them, only 20% are broker's licensed.
The reason that I decided to become a broker is to elevate and distinguish myself from the other 80% of the agents who aren't brokers in our industry. And all that means is that it takes a little bit more work, dedication, education to fulfill that goal.
They have to have a minimum of 5 years experience in the real estate industry. Today, as an example, 40% of all members of the industry have been in the business less than 5 years.
We feel that if a broker has not done at least 50 transactions in his career, he just doesn't have enough experience to develop instincts to give his clients the best service.
The best way to gain experience in this business is to do business.
My experience brings value that I don't even think you can place an amount on. It just makes the difference.
We make a distinction between the people that have developed an ethical value system, because those are the people that we want to work with, and truly, that's who the consumers should work with.
I think you'll find that a real estate organization without salespeople and all independent business owners that are united under a single brand will feel very much like an accounting firm, a law firm, or other professional services that you've had a chance to work with in the past.
I want to be proud of what I do, and I want to be associated with people that I want to work with and that I'm proud to work with.
We're trying to go ahead and work with a very high standard, and those that we are working with are basically sharing the same high standard, which at this point, I have to admit, it's kind of hard to find in our industry.
BrokerIntrust is an exciting next level of our real estate industry.
What that means is everybody that's involved in BrokerIntrust is a broker, plus everybody's had experience and continues to do a fair amount of transactions. Everybody has high integrity.
The people who have raised the bar, who have gotten their broker's license, who have gone to classes and seminars and been involved with organized real estate, that have been really focused on making this industry better. Now the consumer can rely on a brand.
BrokerIntrust was created to be the brand of choice.
And that's why I want to be part of the BrokerIntrust network.
BrokerIntrust is an organization built for you, our friends, our families, mom. They're highly vetted people that you can be assured are qualified to give you the absolute best customer service available. BrokerInTouch is a unique proprietary technology platform of BrokerIntrust. It's a platform that allows all of the brokers within the network to communicate, share, collaborate, and extend to each other the latest things that are happening in all transactions. In doing so, the individual resource of our brokers becomes extended to the entire network. It's probably the most valuable tool available for a client today in real estate.
Solely for the use and resource of our BrokerIntrust network and clients.
We have this brain trust. It's like our think tank. It's where we're all in touch with each other, we share different ideas and share knowledge. And in this market where knowledge is power, it's crucial.
Brokers will be able to interact with one another.
We will be constantly in touch with each other and sharing the latest and helping each other out.
It will help our network members get the answers they need if they come across something that they've never experienced before, which is very probable in today's environment.
In touch, where we can go to chat rooms, where we can set up articles that we can just pass out to each other.
Great place to resource amongst each other strategies for dealing with buyers and sellers and perhaps staying on top of legislative issues that might affect our buyers or our sellers. It's a great place to communicate and a great place to be a community.
I don't know everything. And there have been brokers that have been in the business 40 years that are still learning because every market's different. Every economic environment changes the nature of the real estate market. And we have this resource that extends to our clients.
The other professionals that I'm with at BrokerIntrust are absolutely amazing. The leadership and professionalism they bring helps keep everybody up to date on all of the changes that are going on within the real estate industry. It's an ever-evolving industry, and the information that we share with one another is absolutely amazing and critical to our business.
We as independent brokers can talk with each other through the internet and through social media and through webinars and things of this nature to keep up on the daily changes that are happening in the real estate industry.
We also have tools and processes through Broker in Touch, which will help provide marketing services and transactional processes services.
To work together to serve all of our clients in a better manner.
Maybe the most important thing about BrokerIntrust is that ultimately it's a promise, a very important promise. It's a promise that when you work with a BrokerIntrust broker, anyone who carries that card is a vetted professional. And the promise is when you do, you'll be working with one of the top 15% of the people in the industry.
And I'm not just talking about in production alone, although it is production. I'm talking about their business practices, their ethics, their education, their commitment, and the fact that they are a broker. They're able to supervise themselves.
You want to make sure that the person that you're dealing with is a professional. You want to go to a BrokerIntrust broker because they have been vetted to make sure that not only are they ethical, which is extremely important in today's market, but that they know their business, they know the area, and that they're going to take care of the needs of the public.
Allows me to have signage that has an institutional value and can enable me to have clients that I haven't even met yet to know that by working with me as a broker of my own company, that the level of service they're going to get is going to be phenomenal compared with the other opportunities that may be out there.
And that our promise is that we will make sure that we continue to vet all of our brokers to make sure that they are current and up to date and the most professional of any organization in the real estate world.
And I promise to make my clients feel like they're my only client.
And I promise to always be your trusted advisor.
And I promise to be prepared for any circumstances my clients may encounter.
And I promise to be a great resource for my clients.
And I promise to stay current on all legislation and market conditions that will affect my clients.
And I promise to provide clients with service above self.
And I promise that my clients will have an advantage.